Welcome back. Today we are going to be reading Dumb and Ditzy by TimelessTears. It's going to be Chapter 4. Chapter 4. Chapter 3. Blur out your brilliance. Chief Marco, may I have a moment of your time? Hotch asked, standing in the doorway of the man's office at first light, just as he promised the night before. Of course, come in and take a seat. Is this about the case? Marco asked, frowning when the dark-haired man closed the door and sat down with a look that told the chief he should be prepared for something unpleasant. No, my team will actually be telling your men what we know today, so I need you to let them know to be in the conference room around 10. Consider it done, Marco agreed, still wary as to why Hotchner seemed so tense. Is that all? No, the man admitted. It's about Reed. Oh, Jesus, Marco groaned. What did he do? Trip and topple onto one of your people? Spill coffee on someone? If he's talking too much, just tell him to clam up. Dear God, he didn't mess with the evidence, did he? The chief asked in a panicked tone. He seemed pretty good about leaving it alone, but sometimes I think he might draw smiley faces on some of the victims to make them happy. Please tell me he didn't do something stupid like that. The proud man said, in what could have been considered a begging tone. No, Hotch said again, secretly wondering what Reed did in the past to get this type of reaction from the chief of police. Reed's done an excellent job so far. So, what's the problem? Marco asked, letting out a sigh of relief. My coworker discovered a bruise on Reed's wrist. It was shaped like a hand. After questioning him, it was discovered that some of the officers were playing with him. Hotch told the man in an ice-cold voice that showed his displeasure at their discovery. Again? Damn it. Thank you, Agent Hotchner, for telling me. The chief growled as his face became a deep red from both anger and embarrassment. You know the culprits? Hotch asked in a light voice, but Marco could feel the disapproval underneath. Yes, I've warned them time and time again to leave that boy alone. I thought if I threatened them with suspension, they'd get the message. Guess not, the burly man grumbled as he picked up his phone and dialed the number. Clara? Yes, send Jones, Patrick, and Hastings to my office ASAP. Tell them they better get hightailed over here or their asses are fired. He slammed the phone down before Clara could respond. You're going to fire them? Hotch questioned with a raised eyebrow at the harsh punishment. He believed the officers needed to be punished, but firing them seemed a bit much. No. But the threat will make them sweat. They'll be suspended and they won't be back on this force until they pass an anger management class and an anti-bullying seminar. Now, if that's all you have to say, Agent Hotchner, I'd like to give them their dressing down without an audience. The chief dismissed him, not even caring that Hotch was a higher ranking as an FBI agent. Of course, Hotch complied, knowing all too well how it felt when you had to discipline one of your own. Just as he entered the hallway, he saw three officers speed walking towards the chief's office. Slowing down his own pace, he only made it a few feet after they shut the door and couldn't hold back his smirk at the enraged roar that was muffled by the wooden door. but still heard quite clearly by all in the surrounding area. Making his way back to the conference room, he blinked at seeing both Rossi and Morgan waiting with the hallway with grave looks on their faces. Well, Rossi prompted when it became clear Hotch wasn't going to answer voluntarily. Justice is served, Hotch told them stoically, but the small twinkle in his eyes gave away his satisfaction. Morgan let loose a big grin, and Rossi's mouth slowly morphed into a satisfied smirk. "You're positive?" Rossi asked, just to be on the safe side. "Yes, I'm afraid 3 officers won't be able to make it to the debriefing today," Hotch told them, with a shake of his head, as if he pitied the loss. But both profilers knew better. "Are we getting any names?" Morgan half asked and half growled. He could still see the bruise on that thin, delicate wrist in his mind, and just thinking about it made him upset all over again. "I'm not at liberty to say," Hotch told him sternly, as he began to move towards the conference room, where Reed and the girls were making sure everything was set up correctly for the debriefing. "But," Hotch called over his shoulder, "I'm sure Reed wouldn't mind telling you about his friends." The response made Morgan frown, while Rossi gave a small chuckle, before also walking into the room. Would Reed tell him the name of his tormentors? Most children and adults refused to name their bullies for various reasons: embarrassment, threats, fear. The list could go on for ages. But Reed doesn't see it as bullying, he thought, before giving a feral grin as the epiphany came to him. He thinks they're just playing, so he shouldn't have a problem giving up names. That thought in mind, he joined the others in the room to see that, with the exceptions of the victims' pictures being on the board, everything was ready for the debriefing. Glancing around, he caught sight of Garcia and Reed by the coffee pot and made his way over to them. "So then I whacked him upside the head with my purse," he heard Garcia tell the thin boy proudly. "No way!" Reed gasped, clearly enraptured by her tale. "Did you get in trouble? Not that he totally didn't deserve that," he said, giving her such a worried look that all she wanted to do was kiss it away and give him as much sugar as it took to make him happy again. "Of course I didn't get in trouble, sweetie. I know people," she reassured him with a wink, before noticing Morgan standing nearby. "Well, hello, handsome. For a moment I thought I had died and gone to heaven. Now I see that I am very much alive, and heaven has been brought to me," she joked, using one of the many pickup lines she looked up on the internet for kicks. "If I had a star for every time you brightened my day, I'd have a galaxy in my hand," he greeted back with a charming smile. "Hey, pretty boy," he nodded to Reed. "Hi, Mr. Morgan," Reed replied cheerfully before taking a sip of coffee, trying to ignore the annoyance welling up within his soul over the nickname. Really now? Pretty boy? He couldn't have come up with something a little less insulting? Then again, Reed thought, I did make sure my image was pretty, so I guess I only have myself to blame. Still, to call it out so bluntly, how embarrassing. "So, are you guys dating?" He giggled out in revenge for the pretty boy comment, and felt immense satisfaction at seeing both of them turn red and stutter. No, we just flirt for fun, practice pickup lines on each other, that sort of stuff. Morgan finally managed to get out, with Garcia nodding in agreement. Sounds like fun. Let me try, he said excitedly before closing his eyes in mock concentration. The whole team was now listening in on the conversation and were curious to see what he would come up with. Is he not the cutest thing since baby pandas? Garcia whispered to Morgan as she secretly snapped pictures of Reed with her cell phone. Sorry, Mama, but my tastes go in a different direction. A completely different direction, he told her seriously. Then why'd you hit on him the first day? She asked with a smirk and a wink as she made a small clicking noise with her tongue. Will nobody let that go? I didn't see his face. How was I supposed to know? Aha! Got one! Reed yelled enthusiastically as his eyes popped back open, looking at Garcia. He gave her a smile so sweet she felt cavities growing on her teeth. I was wondering if you had an extra heart. Mine seems to be stolen, he said with a soft blush to match his smile. And Garcia would swear on all her computer gear that sparkles and roses appeared around him. Oh! All the girls cooed at the heart-melting scene. Ugh, Morgan, Rossi, and Hotch muttered under their breath. Hey! Garcia smacked Morgan's arm. That was really sweet. They began to bicker with each other as Reed poured himself another cup of coffee, letting their voices become background noise. His eyes roamed over the room. Without even realizing it, he locked eyes with Rossi. And suddenly, he felt like he was being preyed upon like some sort of animal. There was something in the man's gaze. Did he know something? Was he figuring out his act? Was he waiting for him to make a mistake and call him out on it? Pretty boy, you in there? Would they take him to the chief of police and make him confess? He hoped not. Sugar Plum? They couldn't do that, could they? It's not like he's withholding information. Well, he is, but not for the case, so they can't get him for obstruction of justice. Reed? Come on, man, snap out of it. But what if the chief fired him in a fit of rage? No, that wouldn't be fair. He's doing his job, so they can't fire him. Reed. Haha, wouldn't that be funny to explain to people? Hi, I'm Spencer Reed, and I was let go from my previous job because I pretended to be stupid instead of telling people I had an IQ of 187, can read 2,000 per minute, and remember everything I read. They didn't take it so well when I confessed, and now I'm a hobo on the side of the road doing magic tricks for dollar bills and quarters. Did I mention I was a genius? Haha. Reed! He jumped when he heard Morgan's yell and came out of his stressful thoughts to see both Garcia and Morgan looking at him in concern. You okay, sweetie? We said your name at least 3 times, Garcia told him, her face twisted in worry, making him feel guilty. Sorry, I was just thinking about how my coffee song would sound if it was sung in heavy metal style. He quickly fibbed. I love coffee, it's the best, rah! Yes, coffee lover right here, woof, woof. He growled out in a deep voice. Heavy metal has dogs barking in it? Garcia asked after a moment. I think, Reed replied with a shrug, before drowning his cup of coffee. Man, Stick to the singing off key, please, Morgan pleaded. You didn't like it? Reed asked, with one of the most pathetic pouts Morgan has ever seen on a grown man's face. How is this kid even pulling it off? It shouldn't be possible. Nah, I just don't think the metal world's ready for you. They will never be ready for you, Morgan thought, before deciding he should change the topics. At the speed they were going with this one, he'd have a headache by the end of the hour. Anyway, I wanted to ask you about your friends, Morgan told the skinny boy, who was pouring himself another cup of delicious brew. Which friends? I have a ton, Reed said with a happy smile. He was no longer looking at Morgan or Garcia, but at the board across the room where JJ had put up the pictures of the victims. It was strange. Their poses looked so familiar. Where had he seen them? Had he seen them before somewhere? Or was he just imagining things? The friends you were telling me about last night. You know, the ones who like to roughhouse? Well, as it turns out, I like to play it rough myself. I think you could give me their names. I think we could have a blast. Morgan ended, sharing a devious look with Garcia, who was also itching to get their names so she could ruin their credit beyond repair. Oh, Officer Jones, Patrick, and Hastings, Reed told them faintly, eyes still focused on the photos. In all his time in high school, Reed only ever struggled in 2 classes. One was physical education. He wasn't cut out for it, and the fact that everyone else was twice his size did not help his confidence. The other class he struggled in was art. He could just not wrap his mind around how some paintings, mostly abstract pieces, were considered works of art. Nor did he enjoy the open-ended interpretations that most had. He liked it when it was a problem could only have a logical solution. It's why he was so good with math and science. Still, he disliked being at a disadvantage, so when he was at Las Vegas University, he decided to broaden his knowledge and hopefully gain some understanding. On the first day, they were given a book with about 2,000 pages that had art dating from prehistoric times all the way up to the current day. It gave dates, important history on the artist, and the time period, as well as the media they used. The book also took the time to explain why the artist created the piece and its meaning. Reed loved it. He finished that book in a week. But since he had to keep up appearances, he forced himself to pass the class with a low C. It hurt, but it was worth it to read all that information, to study all those paintings, and finally understand why all those pieces were so important to people. He wondered if it was strange to think of art while staring at the victims. The poses, the flowers, the smile, the corsage, the pearl earring, the dress, the heart, the butterfly. Brown eyes widened as it suddenly all made sense to him. A soft gasp escaped his lip as his styrofoam cup, still filled with hot coffee, splattered onto the floor. Information he had read so long ago became rushing back to him, whispering soothing words of truth in his mind. He heard Morgan and Garcia yell in concern, but their cars seemed so far away. Slowly he moved to the board, his eyes never leaving it. As he gently moved past a worried Emily, soon he started right out in front of it, still staring at the victims without so much as blinking. "Reed?" he heard Hotch question from behind him, and he knew all the profilers had moved right behind him, wonderment and concern filling their actions. He should stop now, something warned him, but he couldn't. That feeling, the same one that had possessed him when he changed the map, was back and burning brighter than ever. It wouldn't let him hide behind his act, and for once in his life, he didn't want to. "Ophelia," he breathed out in a wispy voice, barely above a whisper. "What?" someone asked, confused. But Reed wasn't listening. His mind was busy thinking of all the information he could recall to help convey what he was seeing. Ophelia was a painting done by John Everett Miles from 1851 to 1852. It depicts the death of the character Ophelia from Shakespeare's Hamlet. To this day, there's still some debate on if she fell into the river, but most agree it was suicide. He blurted out as adrenaline took over his soul, and he grabbed a marker and began making notes under the photo. At the time, it wasn't a very popular painting, but gradually became appreciated for its beauty. Today, it's actually worth about £30 million. Not only that, but Miles also made sure to include poppies in the wild flowers surrounding Ophelia. "They represent sleep and death," Rossi interrupted. "Exactly," Reed said excitedly as he moved on to the next girl. Next is Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. He started it in 1503 and finished it in 1519. It's regarded as most famous painting in the world. Did you know that for a long time no one knew who she was? It was only just recently that historians discovered it was Lisa Gherardini, a wife of one of his friends. Another reason this painting captures the viewer's attention is the ambiguity in her eyes. Sharpened eyes, admirers even noticed that the background on her left and right don't match up right. That's probably why the killer made sure the victim was sitting on this particular bus bench. Look behind her. There's a low rising billboard that's been ripped. See, it shows one advertisement on one side and then a different one on the other. It also explains why he gave her a smile and shaved her eyebrows. They're both very important details in the real painting. Reed rambled and moved to the third victim before anyone could so much as breathe. This is actually the one most out of context, but he left me with enough clues to figure out what painting he was copying. Reed lectured in such a voice, the team wondered if this was the same happy, ditzy boy they had gotten to know these past few days. He was going after a bar at the Folies Bergère by Edouard Manet. It's considered his last major work. The actual painting has a young woman tending a bar in the Folies Bergère nightclub in Paris. That's why he laid the victim in front of the Barmaid Tavern on the street corners, bearing the same names as the nightclub. It also explains why he made sure she had on a choker and a corsage. The woman in the painting has them, and there are also several green wine bottles near her reach. That's why green shards were found embedded in Mia Bard. He was keeping up with the theme. Honestly, the unsub didn't spend very much time thinking this one out. He didn't give it nearly as much detail as the others. I wonder if he began bored with it, Reed questioned as he wrote down the fact. Had he bothered to look, he would have seen the slack-jawed looks of shock and disbelief worn by Morgan, Emily, JJ, and Garcia. Hotch had his eyebrows knitted into a fierce expression at the turn of events, and Rossi, the bastard, held a smug look that only he could attain. "I told you so," he muttered to Hotch, and was rewarded with a glare that clearly said, "Shut up before I fire you." Chuckling, he did so, but only because Reed had gone on to the fourth victim. Pearl Revmere had the unfortunate luck of sharing her first name with the work the killer chose for her. It's called The Girl with the Pearl Earring, and was painted by Johannes Vermeer sometime in 1665. There isn't much known about it, but it's been called the Mona Lisa of the North. The girl in the portrait is Dutch, and she's wearing a traditional headpiece that the woman wore during the time to protect their hair from the cold and the heat depending on the season. Vermeer painted her with one pearl earring. It was actually the focal point of the piece. It's also the reason why Pearl Revmere had them stuffed down her throat. Reed made a slight face at that, but since he hadn't turned around once during his tirade of information, no one noticed. They were still having a problem connecting that all this intelligent information was coming out of a boy who asked the previous evening why scientists thought the Earth was round. Sari Doft was meant to represent Frida Kahlo's The Two Fridas. It was painted in 1939 and believed to represent her emotional turmoil after her divorce. She often painted to convey her emotions. In this particular piece, she painted herself and double, both garbed in traditional Mexican dresses. The Frida in white has her heart cut out and is holding scissors. The other Frida has the heart and they're connected by vein that was severed by scissors. "What about the butterfly?" Hotch asked, curious to see what Reed's answer would be. "The butterfly? That's much harder to answer." Reed trailed off as he thought deeply over it. It's hard to pin down what a butterfly can represent to someone because it has so many meanings attached to it. Some cultures see them as an omen of oncoming death. In Greek, butterfly means soul or mind. In this case, however, I think the killer wants the butterfly to stand for rebirth. It's not a commonly known meaning, but Celtics and other cultures saw the butterfly as a symbol of rebirth. It would fit. Essentially, the killer is recreating the paintings, giving them life with his own hands. Reed ended and took a deep breath as a big grin spread across his face. He loved it when he solved interesting conundrums like this. While this is all very educational, a slightly sarcastic voice broke through his joy. "It does leave me with one question," Rossi ended, and Reed could suddenly feel all their gazes boring into the back of his head. It was with the same sudden clarity that helped him figure out this crime that gave him the insight to realize he was screwed 10 ways to Sunday. Einstein's brain, what had he been thinking? "How do you know all of this?" Rossi asked, as if he was speaking about the weather. Reed didn't want to turn around. He didn't want to see their faces, and he most certainly did not want to explain. But for some reason, he was being unusually brave today, and found himself preparing to face them. Setting down the marker, he slowly turned around to look at them. In his fearful state, he mistook their shock and worry at his pale, shaky form for anger. I'm secretly an art buff," he croaked out after a moment of nervous sweating. "Oh, you are?" Rossi asked, with a raised eyebrow at the obvious lie. "Yes?" Reed drew the word out as he somehow managed to maneuver past all the profilers. "I know everyone from Van Gogh to Pollock. Ha! Gotta love them artists with all their paint and pottery and paint. Oh, look at the time. I needed to go get my vacation time. Yes, I'm due for a sudden vacation. See you guys later. Hope you have fun. Bye," he replied quickly as he practically ran out of the room. The team just looked at each other in silence. Then a bang was heard from the hall, followed by a muffled, "Ow! Stupid wall! Why are you always in my way?" "Did you trip again, Reed?" Rossi called out, his amusement clear to the others. "What? No, of course not. I meant to run into this wall." Reed sniffed after a moment of groaning. The team listened, some of them wincing in sympathy as they heard a few more groans of pain as the boy continued down the hallway, meeting other inanimate objects intent on sending him to the floor. "That kid is a walking disaster," Rossi commented. "Forget that," Morgan said. "I want to know how he was able to spout all that out. I think he just broke the case." "We'll worry about that later," Hotch cut in, taking over. "Garcia, use the search engine and pull up those paintings he was talking about." "I'm already on it," she told him, typing at an almost inhuman speed. When the first picture loaded, she let out a surprised gasp. "What is it, Garcia?" Morgan asked in alarm, already by her side. "I think Reed was right. This painting is the spitting image of our first girl up there," she stage whispered, curiosity getting the better of them. The group gathered around and watched as Garcia brought up pictures of the paintings to compare to the victims. "I think it's safe to say that young Reed gave us quite the breakthrough," Rossi whistled, impressed. "It also fits with Nevada School of Fine Arts being our central point," JJ pointed out, reminding them all about the forgotten map. JJ's right. After we finish debriefing the officers on what we know, we'll head down to the school and ask some questions. Hotch decided. Things were making much more sense now that they had a bigger picture to look at. "All the information?" Emily asked him. "Even the stuff Reed just gave?" "Yes," he told her after a moment of thinking it over in his head. "What? But Hotch, he's not a profiler. I mean, his theory sounds valid, but..." Emily spoke up hesitantly. "But look at his thought process from the last 2 days. Not exactly the brightest crayon in the box." She hated to admit that, because she really did adore Reed, but she wasn't about to let the case follow his ideas without so much as a by your leave. "Emily, look at the resemblance in these paintings and our victims. That's not a coincidence," Rossi cut in, gaining her attention. "As for his intelligence, when you were younger, how many times did you have to go to some fancy party for your mother and pretend to enjoy it?" he asked her. "Ugh, I swear, it felt like every 2 days. I hated those things, she grimaced at the bad memories. I always had to have a smile pasted on my face and act like I was having a good time. But what's that have to do with Reed? Perhaps Reed's not as stupid as everyone thinks. In fact, I'm beginning to think he's much smarter than he's willing to confirm, Rossi admitted. Before anyone could answer, a flood of police officers came in for the debriefing. At the front was Chief Marco, who quickly walked up to the team. Can any of you explain why Reed just rushed past my office asking for vacation time? He seemed quite flustered about it, James asked them, worry clear on his face. No one was messing with him, were they? I've already dealt with the 3 Mean Stooges. I don't think there were any more. No, Hotch said smoothly. He wasn't being bullied. I think he was just embarrassed when Agent Morgan told him not to sing his songs in heavy metal style. At hearing this, the tension in the chief's body fizzled out, and he let out a relieved sigh. Of course, he laughed. Sorry about that. I've told him time and time again that singing isn't very professional, but I have to admit his songs grow on people, even if they are just repeating the same lines with the word yeah thrown in a few times. But yes, I'm afraid he'll sing them in every genre, from country to opera if you let him. I'm surprised, though. We've asked him to stop before, and he never took offense. Exactly how did you tell him to stop, Agent Morgan? The chief asked, looking at him suspiciously. He looked just the type that would slam Reed into a wall just because he felt like it. Ah, that's not why he ran off in a tizzy. Garcia cut in quickly, seeing how Morgan tensed at the veiled accusation. It was my fault, sir. I thought he was so cute singing his little tune that I just had to give him a hug. I don't think he was expecting it, so he was a bit shocked. Tell him I'm sorry, she lied, giving the man a small pout. That's all? The chief asked, and saw them all nod in agreement. I see. Come to think of it, he doesn't really like to be hugged all that much. In fact, the only person I've ever seen him hug voluntarily is Jones, and I think that was just to annoy him. The man muttered to himself, and the team exchanged quick smiles at the information. Where is Reed now? JJ asked, wanting to know if he was okay. I went ahead and gave him the morning off. I almost gave him the whole day, but that's not fair to anyone else, Marco admitted. I thought he was being bullied again, and he kept running into so many things, I figured it'd be best to give him a few hours to calm down, James told him sheepily. How many things did he run into? Rossi couldn't help but ask. Never in all his life had he seen a person as clumsy as Reed. Reed was actually still in the office. He did leave, but it was only when he reached the bus stop that he realized he took the bus and that the bus would not be by for some time. Defeated, he walked back to the station and, as stealthily as he could, tried to sneak back to his workstation. He nearly died from relief when he realized all the officers were at the meeting. The secretaries were still at work, but a quick mumble that he had to work made them leave him alone. At that moment, he was hiding under his desk. It was a rather tight fit, but he was making it work. And for the record, he was doing his work, just he was doing it under his desk. If anyone found him, he'll just say he's playing hide and seek or something, they'd believe it. Well, everyone but the BAU. Just the thought put him in a panic all over again. What were they going to do to him? He didn't want to lose his job, but it was obvious they didn't buy his excuse. God, his life was ruined. And why? Because he couldn't keep his mouth shut? There were other ways to give them info. Subtle directions, anonymous notes, fake email account. But no, he had to go and show off. His eyes became blurry, and he realized, for the second time in the span of 2 days, he was crying. Only this time, it wasn't for joy. It was for safety that was bound to be ripped away from him. It was for the looks on the faces of his friends when they discovered he was a fake. He didn't want to face the world, so he hid under his desk and quietly let his tears fall. He held his breath when he heard the loud thundering of footsteps as the officers left the meeting and went to their cars. He would guess that the chief, Marco, had insisted on going to the school with the BAU to find the killer. Good. He didn't want to see any of them at the moment. The moment it became quiet again, he let loose his quiet sniffles and wiped at his cheeks. Surely this wasn't the end of the world, was it? Who knows, maybe they wouldn't tell Marco anything. No, of course they would. It would be remiss not to. Years and years of being bullied came to the front of his mind, and as far as he was concerned, he'd be beaten within an inch of his life the moment they found out how smart he was. Kids did it in high school. Why would adults be any different? Just the thought made him cringe, and he didn't even realize someone was at his desk until a voice called out, "Pretty boy?" He froze. What was Morgan doing here? He should be going with the others to the school. Why was he still at the station? For what felt like the 1,000th time that day, Reed began to silently panic. "Come on, pretty boy. I know you're here. The secretaries told me you came back here." Unconsciously, Spencer squeezed further into the corner of his desk, hoping Morgan would just go away. It was not to be. Instead, the agent bent down, and his heart broke at the sight of the tall man looking so small, scrunched up in that tiny corner, eyes bright with tears, and holding a fear that Morgan was used to seeing on abused children. What had this kid gone through to gain such a look? "Oh, pretty boy," Morgan said sadly with a small shake of his head. "What are you doing back there?"
Playing hide and seek,"
Reed hiccuped, wiping his eyes, trying his best to keep up his act. "Really now?" Morgan asked gently, even though they both knew it was a lie.
"Of course. Why else would I be under a desk? What about you? Shouldn't you be with the others, catching the bad guy?"
"Nah. Hotch Apprentice JJ and Rossi are going with most of the force. Marco really wants this guy put away," Morgan told Reed as he thought about the enthusiastic expression the chief had when Hotch informed him about the art school. "I know we'll catch this creep. We always do. Honestly, I'm more worried about something else."
"What?"
Reed asked, curious. "You," Morgan told him.
Me?"
Reed stuttered in surprise. "Yeah, the way you rushed out this morning really had me worried. I wanted to make sure you were okay. At first we thought you'd left, but one of the secretaries informed us you took the bus to work, and came back in a few minutes after you left," Morgan told him.
"The bus wasn't there, so I couldn't go anywhere,"
Reed mumbled, blushing at his mistake. "Why do you want to leave? Are we that scary?" Morgan joked, getting comfortable on the floor when he realized Reed wasn't moving anytime soon.
"I didn't want to see you. Any of you,"
Reed admitted in a small, nervous voice. "Why?"
Because you...
He cut himself off with a frustrated look.
"I don't want to say it,"
he admitted after a moment. "Why?" Morgan asked, and Reed had a feeling that the man would repeat that question until he got an answer.
"Because you'll hate me,"
Reed said so softly that Morgan only heard a muffled tone. "What? I didn't catch that. Run it by me one more time?" Morgan insisted, hoping Reed would answer. He did, but it wasn't what Morgan wanted.
"I said I forgot to get you guys more cookies,"
Reed gasped out, and suddenly all that stillness went away, and he began to move like an Energizer bunny. For some strange reason, the small part of him that fiercely wanted to keep his act alive took over, and he couldn't have been more grateful. This he could do. This he knew how to handle. Not awkward, emotional questions that might have him spilling his guts. "Oh, fiddles! I also need to check the coffee pot. Wouldn't do you any good to have an empty... Ow!" he yelped as he banged his head while trying to get out from underneath his desk. Easy there, kid," Morgan said, gently taking a flailing hand and helping him up. "Ah, thanks, Mr. Morgan," Reed told him with a sunny smile before dashing out the door, leaving a bemused Morgan behind. "What just happened?" the agent asked himself. Walking at a much slower pace, Morgan found Reed and Garcia chatting up a storm in the conference room. "Are you sure you're all right? Your eyes are awfully red," she questioned Reed in a worried tone as she gently tucked a loose strand of his hair behind his ear. Although he was still smiling, he moved away from her touch. "I'm fine, Miss Garcia," he chirped quite exuberantly. "I just came to refill the coffee pot and maybe get you guys some more food. Oh, do you think you'll find the killer?" he asked in a hushed tone. "I don't know. There's a pretty good chance, thanks to the information I'll go make the banner then. Mr. Morgan said that mean man would be caught, and I believe him. What should I put on the banner? How about pow, boom, take that bad guy. The BAU just snagged you. Yay!" he ended, doing some strange wave movement with his arms. "What do you think, Miss Garcia?" "Well, sugar, it certainly has pizzazz. You know I'll take it home even if Hodge and Rossi don't like it," she told him with a smile, ignoring the fact that he cut her off the moment she was about to mention his brilliant moment at the board. "I'll start on it right away," he exclaimed happily, running towards the door and smacking right into Morgan's chest. "Sorry, Mr. Morgan, can't talk now. I have a banner to make," Reed chirped as he moved around the stunned man. "Well, he's certainly much happier. Was that your doing?" Garcia asked her chocolate god with a smile. Actually, baby girl, I don't think it was. He told her before filling her in on what happened.
My poor baby, she sniffed when he got to the part about Reed hiding under his desk. He knows he's not going to be persecuted for having a smart thought, right? We aren't living in the ancient days. I don't know. It was so strange. One moment he was sad, and the next it was like he was hyped up on sugar. Maybe he's bipolar, Garcia suggested. No, Morgan said seriously. There's something strange going on with him, but it's not that. He's hiding something, and I'm going to figure out what.